Shakalaka!
Do you know just how many points LeBron will score tonight? Prove that you're a prop bet god with Thrive Fantasy and win cash prizes. Download the app from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store using the promo code SWING when you sign up. Receive an instant $20 bonus on your first deposit of $20 or more. Thrive Fantasy. Sign up and prop up today. Hello and welcome to The Swing, where it's your boy HK and I'm joined by my co-host Owais to break down what was the end of the Raptors series, a successful sweep, a very successful season coming to its next step, which is going to be a matchup for the first time ever against the Boston Celtics. But before we get into any of that, before we start talking about basketball, as always, as the Swing mentioned before, it is nothing but an ally to the movement Black Lives Matter. And tragically so, on August the 23rd, we were once again reminded just why such a movement is important. As Jacob Blake, an unarmed man in Wisconsin, while preventing a different domestic dispute, was shot 7 times in the back, and from reports that we hear now, it is unlikely that he'll be able to walk again. And it's just one of those where, why these things happen, it's hard to fathom, it's hard to understand. And from even a basketball perspective, it has clearly had a huge effect on the morale of the players around. We saw that there was an ESPN interview today where you had Jaylen Brown come out and talk about it. We had Fred VanVleet come out and talk about it, and even going as far as to say that, you know, they feel so powerless as to what they can do, and they've been discussing what it is that can be action that would actually create some sort of change, some sort of ripple effect, and it could even be boycotting one of the games in the series or boycotting the series altogether. I mean, these are all just things to be talked about, but it's important that we keep these issues that are bigger than basketball front and center. And, you know, with the amount of backlash that you've heard otherwise on how the NBA is really pushing the agenda, this is just a reminder as to why that is.
Absolutely. It's tragic, and of course, we hope and we pray, and it's up to us to make a better future. So do what we can, do our part. For our American listeners, please vote, and let's get right into some basketball content for you guys. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, for the first time in franchise history, the Toronto Raptors have swept the Brooklyn Nets. What a
Beautiful.
Full circle. HK, talk about that.
Absolutely. Look, as we've said from the beginning, this was the start of the We the North era with that Brooklyn series. Obviously, the personnel is different. The circumstances are different, and frankly, the Toronto Raptors are a different team. And this series was all about them taking care of business.
100%.
And apart from the outlier game that was, 5.1, went slightly deep, every other game was won by close to 20 plus points. And this was the icing on the cake. 150 to 122 win, capped off by an NBA record-setting amount of points from the bench. 100. 100. I could have Will Chamberlain sitting here holding it up. 100 points that the Raptors bench scored to absolutely demolish this team.
Absolutely.
The previous high was set by the Mavericks back in 2011 of 86. And look, it just goes to show, one, I'm not going to toot the horn too hard about this because obviously the Brooklyn Nets are a team that is in the budding stages of their growth. And if there's any shout out to be given to them, just like last time, they still played hard. Even in this game when they were getting smoked. It wasn't really until the fourth quarter where you really start to see their shoulders drop.
Right.
Right? And that's a testament to Jacques Vaughn. I really do hope that he does get the opportunity to be the full-time coach for the team. Although we've been seeing reports that the Nets are going to be out chasing Greg Popovich. I still have zero doubt that Greg Popovich is never leaving the San Antonio Spurs. Or if he does, it's going to be to retire. That's it. I can't see him coaching any other team, but hey, if the players have shown how much power they have to choose which team they want to play for, maybe the recruitment process going towards coaches can have some effect too.
Absolutely. And that's pretty much what we have to say about the Brooklyn Nets series. Congrats to the Toronto Raptors. Hopefully to all those players in the Brooklyn Nets, they know that we appreciated them for coming out and giving us some warm-up games. But now the real deal begins.
Oh, yeah.
Round 2 is beginning this Thursday against the Boston Celtics, one of the teams I cannot stand in comparison to the rest. Why is that? Well, one, green is an ugly color. In basketball, that is. No, it's not. We're just kidding. But really, it comes down to the fact that the Boston Celtics have consistently this season been our kryptonite.
Yeah.
And we talked about that earlier, and we had a podcast explaining why they've been our kryptonite. And now that we're facing them in the second round, we want to talk about that in a little bit more detail. So let's start off right with why the Boston Celtics will be a tough matchup. And as you were saying, HK, they are a very similar type of team to the Raptors. Could you explain that a little further?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the Boston Celtics have been built very much from the ground up with very much homegrown talent, guys that are really starting to come into their own. And they play a very similar pace. They play a very similar style when it comes to being very strong defensively, especially in the transition.
Oh, yeah.
And then looking to turn around and beat you on that. And they beat you by committee by and large, which is very much how the Raptors work too. You can say that they're budding superstars on each side. Jason Tatum has had an incredible postseason thus far, and by and large, he's had just a great season. Obviously got to be an all-star for the first time this year. One of what will probably be many selections going forward for him. And they're going to be coming in full of confidence because they also had an absolute drubbing of a series in the process being officially ended, I would say at this point, if it wasn't already, with their sweep. Rest in peace. But look, there are a couple of key stats to me that really show how close they are. First and foremost, net rating. Net rating, this team has very much been the same, 6.3 to 6.1 to the Celtics' advantage. Very similar on the offensive rating as well, where we saw that the Celtics had the 4th rating to the Raptors' 3rd. But the slight difference coming up over here is that the Celtics had been slightly better defensively from a rating perspective on there. And that when we're talking about the pace, they are the 17th fastest team in the league. The Raptors not far behind at 12th, so we're not running you out of the gym. But to me, that is actually going to be a very important factor when we talk about the series. And I know we're going to spend a little bit of time later talking about the pace. But very similar teams, very much running on the back of their point guard to get them going. Kemba Walker, who has been the Raptors' kryptonite for the longest time. Even on Charlotte, he had at least 2 game winners that come off the top of my head. One, which I was there live for. Step back that he hit over. Kemba has always had something special in the bag whenever he faces the Toronto Raptors. And to me, him and Kyle Lowry are very similar in the sense that they are very janky in their dribble. They are sneaky in how they get going. They don't necessarily look to just explode past you or beat you off, but they will beat you in ways that you don't see coming.
Mm-hmm.
Kemba has an absolutely disgusting step back that just clears the kind of space that James Harden looks, right? So it's just as nasty. And it all just comes down to a couple of X factors, which we'll spend some time talking about.
100%.
But
yeah, so very quickly, like if we were to do some sort of matchups, especially considering like the starting lineup, like I would have actually said that Kemba's a little bit more similar to maybe like Fred VanVleet in the current situation, right? Kemba's averaging about 24.3 points, about 1.3 steals, 4 assists, and shooting about 50% from field goal and about 30% from three-point land, which is something you don't expect to stay that way because he is such a lethal shooter.
Yeah.
And, I associate him to be a great matchup for Fred VanVleet, quite honestly, the way that he's been playing.
Right.
Fred having about 21.3 points per game, 1.3 steals, 8 assists, 56% from three-point land, and about 53% from field goal percentage. But one thing for sure is that he struggled immensely against the Celtics this season. So we need to see him step up big time. Now, Kyle Lowry, speaking of, Kyle Lowry did twist his ankle in that last game, and they did have an MRI done on the arch of his foot, I believe, something like that.
Although now it's been diagnosed as a left ankle sprain, and he's put down his day-to-day. Look, it looked bad in real time, not going to lie. I looked at it and I was like, oh, man.
Yeah, it did.
Haven't seen that, and just the way he initially hobbled and tried to go off. It very much reminded me of just what we saw with Luka Doncic a little while ago, but just as Doncic was able to warrior his way through it, you have to keep in mind that he's 21, Lowry's 34. There's a lot that goes with that. And at the same time, it's just one of those where Lowry relies on that part of his game just so much, the capability to be able to take the hits at all times, the capability to be able to, as I said, have that step to get past you, while Doncic is not as, I would say, as quick. He's beating you more with size and strength. So it is a worry for me, and much like the Celtics, they are already losing Gordon Hayward for 4 weeks, which, I mean, I'm incredibly unhappy about because I really like Gordon Hayward. But from a Raptors perspective,
that's one less option.
That's one less option, and to me, Hayward was one of those X factors, because when we talk about the matchups, and I know you're going to get into the individual players there, to me, Hayward was that guy that could kind of float around in there, and that we didn't really have a direct guy that we were consistently putting on, because if he's floating in between that 2, 3, and even sometimes 4 spot there, it's hard to be able to keep switching off on him, because Jalen and Jason are both big guys. They're big dudes, and they also require a lot of attention from a ball handling perspective. So Hayward is a big loss for them. Hopefully Kyle won't be for us. If we're going by the Alvin Williams interview, he's 99.9% sure he's going to play. So unless Lowry had his foot ripped off him, I'm sure he would have found a way on the court, but his effectiveness will still be to be determined.
Absolutely.
Hopefully he's
Dude,
fine.
Kyle Lowry's a dog. This guy is going to come back, and he's going to try his best to play. My guy played with, like, almost a broken wrist for all we know, or broken hand, thumb, whatever it was last season during the entire, pretty much the second time, starting the second round.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, his ability to kind of fight through that pain is something, that is so admirable. Of course, we want him to be healthy. We don't want this to be such a bad injury that affects him in later rounds if, we get there. But definitely a dog, definitely a leader, and no matter what, you want to see Kyle Lowry on the court leading the Raptors to some sort of a victory, right? So, now, speaking of these kind of matchups that we were talking about, we talk about Jaylen Brown. Right now, the guy's averaging about 22 points, 6 rebounds, 2.5 assists. Free throws 92% in the playoffs.
Jaylen,
are you kidding me?
Really improved that part of his game.
And that guy's probably like a 60 to 70% shooter.
70, yeah.
Yeah, like in the season. So that is big because he is a slasher at, he's got that body, he's got that frame. So if, he's getting to the line and shooting that well, those are pretty much free money buckets for the Boston Celtics, which could be troublesome. We talk about Norman Powell for us, of course, he had a little bit of a rough start at the beginning. I'm not going to say that this is the actual matchup, but considering if Kyle Lowry is sitting out for the first game, that's probably going to be the matchup.
Yeah.
And so Norman Powell averaging about 17.5 points. He's shooting 60% from the field, which is insane. 45% from three-point land, and averaging about 4.5 rebounds. Now, one thing is again, also Norman Powell, and you'll see this consistent, is that the Raptors have struggled against the Celtics during the season, and as has he against the Celtics. So let's see how he kind of matches up with that.
Yeah, and look, this idea of finding struggles against the Celtics has kind of been a theme for even our previous runs. Even when we win games against the Celtics, it's always one of those where, to me, we make it tougher than we need to be.
Should, yeah.
Because a lot of it is just mental block to me. Siakam especially, if we look at the matchups that he had in the regular season against the Boston Celtics, he struggled hard in 2 out of the 4 games for sure. One, he actually picked back up, even though we ended up losing that game, but it was when he had early foul troubles off the bat, came back in the fourth quarter to have a good game. But to me, it all comes down to how much Siakam can stay within himself, because I feel like it's like he marks the Celtics matchup as one that he really wants to try and dominate, to assert himself in, and that has actually been his downfall, because you kind of end up playing into Brad Stevens' hands. Because look, as much as this is going to be a battle on the court, this is also going to be a battle between 2 of the best coaching tacticians that we have in the league today.
Ooh.
That is going to be one of the key areas that I'm going to be watching throughout this series, because if we're talking about 2 coaches that are the darlings of the NBA at this point, because of the fact that they are so willing to change things around, they're not going to be stuck in their ways. If you find one that's not, or a thing that's not working, it is going to be scrapped
in an instant.
It's going to be changed around, and that's going to be incredibly exciting, because, as you said, this is the first time we get to actually deal with a series against Boston, which, I mean, in a way, it's incredibly surprising, because obviously we've had a lot of playoff runs in the past. Both teams have. It's just been one of those where either LeBron has stopped us from beating them or some other intervening matchup has prevented it. But it's been a long time coming, and to me, these are the 2 best tacticians in the NBA with very similar assets in their armory.
Yes.
So, as much as I would love to say that this is a matchup that the Raptors will feel good about, it's likely going to be a complete grind fest all the way through.
Personally, I feel like I'm actually more scared of the Boston Celtics than I am of the Milwaukee Bucks, and that is a big statement to make. Anyway, I love your point about the coaching. I'm very excited to see how each coach adapts to each game. Now, speaking of which, I just want to quickly touch up upon some of the success that the Raptors had defensively against, the Boston Celtics in that one game that we won. Now, how the Raptors ended up winning that game was strictly because of their defense. Not so much on an offensive end, but the defensive end. And what they did was they were very aggressive right off the bat. So they were playing almost like a full court press, double teaming when they could, and forcing guys to make that pass in the middle, or at least forcing them to go right down the middle. So, you have Fred VanVleet, Norman Powell, we had McCaw at the time, and Kyle Lowry taking charges. These guys were taking big time charges because, one thing is that Boston may have been shooting well in the playoffs, but honestly, a lot of these players are ISO style players, so they like to chuck up their shots instead of slashing to the basket all the time. And so, if they chuck up 20 shots, we're happy with that. Hopefully, maybe 30-40% of them go in, but also if they do slash, they will run into the Raptors defense. Chances are the charges happen. Also, one last thing is, Fred's going to be monumental in this series, especially defensively. His hands were so active in that one game that changed the game around. So the deflections that the Raptors had. So one thing was they were so aggressive, and actually the referees were very lenient with the calls, so didn't blow the whistle too much. And do we expect that to be translating into this series? Probably not. So you have to be a little bit careful. But I think the Raptors do need to rough up the Celtics in order to, remind them that, they can't just get some easy buckets. Like, we're not going to back down from some of their, contact-heavy sort of guys.
Yeah. I mean, it's telling that Kemba had an interview about halfway through the Sixers series where he was asked about how his game has changed. How is it that he's finding so much more success? And plain and simple, he was just talking about how much space he got during that Sixers series. And, Inside the NBA had a really, nice little thing about Kenny talking about the Sixers defense, and just plain and simple how incredibly lost it was in terms of how they're handling the pick and roll, especially whether they're blitzing the ball handler, whether they're hanging back on it, and even when it goes out to the perimeter, how is it that Al Horford is being asked to either go out or stay home? And it was quite literally changing on an instant play as if they had no idea what they were doing and just going at it. And that was leaving Kemba, especially with so much space, because as good as Kemba is, for him to shoot 50% in a series where he really should have been forced to go to the rim as much as possible because of the Sixers' size, they didn't. They essentially allowed him to do what he wanted out there, and as a result, he was easily breaking people down off the dribble. You're not going to get that kind of opportunities with the Toronto Raptors.
No.
And that's where we need to really buckle down, because to me, the Celtics offense gets going when Kemba is allowed to have that little bit of space early in the offense, get the ball going, and then Tatum gets involved at the top of the break and be able to get to either his spot in the corner, or now he's become deadly in the elbow, so he's able to get that.
Yeah, man. Seriously, his post game has improved so much. He's got so many different moves. He absolutely. And again, what's his name? The guy from Philly.
Tobias Harris?
No. The guy.
Matisse Thybulle.
Matisse Thybulle.
Yes.
So, sorry, I get the name confused, but he's getting to become at that elite level of defensive. In his first year, which is pretty crazy to see. But Jason Tatum had a field day with him, and I was watching some of the highlights and some of the games myself, and a lot of it just comes down to just how smart Tatum is playing right now. You know, the Celtics are able to give him the space that he needs, especially in the mid-range area, and from there, like, I don't know what the Philly defense was doing, to be quite honest, but that. Once he's in that ISO position, I mean, he was so successful because reading the body, understanding, like, you know, where he's going to bite, where he needs to be, like slashing, using his length, using his size, similar to what we want Pascal to do. Did it so effectively. And, you know, if we can actually prevent both, I would say try and force Jaylen Brown to take most of the shots. If you can limit Jason Tatum and if you can limit Kemba and use their third option as their premier option, we should be good. Now, the one thing I'm concerned about is, again, the Raptors, great perimeter defensive team. However, in the Brooklyn Nets series, you saw that they did struggle a little bit, and those kids were shooting lights out at some parts of the game. Now, we need to clean that up immediately. Immediately, because Boston's not a team that's just going to let that go. They're an elite team, and you give them that space, they will make you pay for it.
Yeah, and they're very much a confidence team. You've seen it again and again, even in those games where we did end up losing pretty badly. Raptors had early leads in pretty much 2 out of those 4 games for sure. Even that Christmas game, we started off with an early lead. And then after that, once they were able to get themselves going, and especially if Jaylen is able to get himself going to the basket early, that opens up the rest of his game so much, because he is still a shooter that is working his way up towards being a better version of himself. He's a good shooter. He's become a good shooter. But to me, it's all about him being taken out of that comfort zone that he's found himself in. And that happens because he knows he's quick. He knows he's able to get to the basket. He gets those 1 or 2 dunks early, and then he feels like he can do anything. So
literally anything.
Literally. So it all comes down to how much you can get them out of their comfort zone, and then instead focus on the areas where you're going to be winning this matchup. And to me, that is the bench. The bench is going to be, in my opinion, the biggest turning point in this entire series.
Okay.
We've already talked about Norman Powell being incredible throughout this year with all the injuries, and especially now in the playoffs. Did you know he's also leading the NBA right now in the playoffs in plus minus?
Get out.
Number one.
No.
Number 1 in the NBA in plus
Norm,
minus.
baby, do your
Norm
thing,
has been
baby.
insane. But when we talk about those guys coming off the bench, to me, one of Boston's glaring weaknesses comes on that guard play coming off the bench. Because look, they now have Marcus Smart pretty much being their full-time starter. They have Brad Wanamaker as their main guard off the bench. He's a solid guy. He's been playing pretty decently for them. But he is very much a slash and that's it. His jump shot is incredibly janky, and it's one of those where he is constantly just looking to bowl in China shop, get inside on you, and at the same time he can play solid defensively. But a lot of their bench point production, they're pretty much hoping for energy minutes to be able to come and get that. So Enes Kanter will come in for 15 minutes at a time, try to get in high usage, get in buckets on there to get themselves going, because they know he's a liability defensively, so use him for what they can, which is going to be to try to establish that. Now, if you compare that to the bench production that we're able to get on a more consistent basis, whether it be from Norman Powell, whether it be from Terrence Davis, right? All of these guys that are essentially established pieces that are often in situations where they're playing with the starters, the Celtics don't have that luxury. So that depth is going to be incredibly important for the Raptors. And oftentimes you talk about that, the best player in the series is what ends up winning a series for you, or that's going to be what you focus most on. But given that, honestly, I don't know who the best player in this series is. I know we had that Siakam-Tatum argument earlier. I'm still going to say Siakam it is, but Tatum has been playing better.
I'm going to say Chris Boucher.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is on a given night, you could get a different big producer.
100%.
So
yes,
where the difference is going to come is where those small moments that you can win. And those moments are going to come at the end of the first quarter, the start of the second quarter,
the start
end
of the
third quarter.
The start of the third.
Exactly.
The Raptors have been struggling with that as well.
So those moments in which we can help establish ourselves and we can have our bench guys outperform the Celtics bench, that is where they're going to win. And secondly, to me, we're going to win in the paint as well. That is where you need to go
much
at
bigger
it.
Team.
Yeah, bigger team. And Daniel Tice is more of a stretch guy for them anyways.
Absolutely.
He's been solid defensively. He's actually helped them kind of get away from the loss of Horford because he's able to give him that stretch while still being a very solid defender in the paint. But that is a matchup we have to win. Points in the paint, we got to win.
100%. And what a time for Marc Gasol to come through, right? Yes. What a time. And it's funny that you mentioned that Tice had an incredible series against the Sixers. What really ticked me off about the Sixers is that in the late moments of the game, you gotta go to Embiid in the paint. He's got him open.
Yeah.
They still don't elect to give it to him. Like, I don't understand. It was pissing me off so much. So I'm like, what we need to do, hopefully, if we're given the opportunity, try to use your bigs. Use those to your advantage. Get those foul calls. Boston will be looking to foul a little bit here and there. But just, points in the paint. That's a great point. X Factors. You want to talk about X Factors really quickly? Yeah.
So, we already spoke about the bench in general and Norm being that. The other big X Factor to me is going to be OG in this series.
OG Anunoby.
OG is going to be not only the primary defender for a lot of times on Jason Tatum throughout the series, which is going to be absolutely just monumental in terms of being able to slow him down, but a lot of growth that we saw in OG was his post game, especially in that first series against Brooklyn. Even in this last game 4 over here, he had a really nice post move, shimmy up to get that dunk again. Yeah. And OG's showing it. He's showing
every game he had a really big one.
Yeah, but it just goes back to me, if there's guys that, I know what I'm going to get from, or at least I hope I know what I'm going to get from, between Lowry, Van Vliet, Siakam, I expect them to be focal points in the offense. But I need OG to be incredibly involved in this series. To me, if we looked at last year's playoff run, right, we had Embiid and Gasol was the guy for him, right? This is the guy to stop him, and that has been monstrous in terms of us being able to win that series. And in the Milwaukee series, you had Giannis and then Kawhi on him, right? And to me, in this series, it's going to be that Tatum-OG matchup that's going to determine whether we win, plain and simple. Because if OG can do what I know OG can do with his strength, with his size, and frankly with his, to me, untapped ceiling at this point, that is going to be what, in my opinion, is going to be the key factor to see in terms of whether we are successful or not.
Okay, and I think that's really, really a great point that you mentioned, because we have seen such improvements in terms of the way that OG's slashing to the basket as well. And, I hope, we know defensively OG is a stud, and we want to continue to see him be a stud there. But on the offensive end, what I hope is if he is slashing to the basket and Tatum is the one guarding him, we want to get Tatum into foul trouble. Now, Tatum's been playing incredible defense this playoff so far. Yep. He's averaging almost 1 or 2 blocks a game, which is pretty insane to me, as I thought he wasn't so much of a defensive player as he is showing to be right now. So anyway, OG should have a great series. We want to see him step up. We want to see him earn that championship this year. Unfortunately, of what happened last year.
Yeah.
But also, for me, X Factor by far and large, Serge Ibaka.
Yeah.
Serge Ibaka, again, he has a size. He's almost matching up with Tice to some extent. However, be what's the word? His energy needs to be contagious. We need him to force these offensive rebounds.
Yeah.
He needs to jump for every possession.
Yeah.
We need him to hit his threes, and we need him to set hard screens, and we need him to play great perimeter and paint defense. Like, if anything, this is his series. So please, Serge, we love you. Let's go.
Yeah, don't end up like punching Marcus Smart or something, because I'm
No,
sure
no,
we're
no.
gonna.
They're gonna try.
Look, if we're talking about contagious energy, right? That to me was the other thing that I wanted to talk about, because the Celtics feed off of Marcus Smart's energy. Marcus Smart is in the starting lineup, and he has been like absolutely doo-doo on offense. He's never going to shoot anything. Well, he's going to keep shooting, but he's never going to hit anything.
No.
If he does, you know you're in for a bad night.
No.
But his energy on defense and plain and simple, his capability to get under your skin is what Boston feeds off, and we have to stay away from that, because we have engaged in it again and again and again during the regular season, and once that happens, you're a losing battle.
If anything, we have to be the perpetrator. I want Lowry to be flopping like an idiot every opportunity he gets to piss him off.
Smart will probably flop with it.
Probably
Just be like,
I hope not, but that would be great for memes. But yeah, man, like, seriously, Marcus Smart is a pest, and we do not want this to be, and I'm going to use the analogy of the Toronto Maple Leafs, actually. We don't want a Brad Marchand here affecting us in this series, okay? Brad Marchand, for those who don't know, is a hockey player who's an absolute rat of a person. Not a person, that's mean. Of a player. Gets under your skin, does really weird stuff, but is also a straight hustler. So that's what we expect from Marcus Smart. He's going to get dirty. He's going to get aggressive. He's going to be physical. He's going to try to, jump on you for like a koala if the ball is even marginally close to the ground. Like, he's going to do everything he can. Stop that. Focus on the bigger goal, which is to win the game. That's important.
absolutely.
And we hope the Toronto Raptors come through with this, this incredible series we've been waiting for so long.
Look, to me, this is the matchup of the second round that we're going to be getting at this point. Right, we'll see what the West one turns out to be. But to me, in terms of the most competitive of series, I find that this is going to be that. And I'm predicting that it's going to go 6. That's my opinion, and that it's going to be a tough-fought six-game series. If it goes to 7, I'm a bit iffy on us being able to pull that. But I'm saying that the Raptors will be able to pull this off in 6 games, and it's going to be an absolute grind-out series, all games ending in single-digit points, with us starting 6:30 p.m. August 27th.
August 27th. Check it out. We have more coming for you guys. And until then, keep liking our posts, keep liking our content, comment, subscribe. Love us. We love you back. All right?
Absolutely. That's right. Just keep following us at The Swing, and we'll see you at the end of Game 1. Peace.
Adios.